Hi, folks. Okay. Um, Hi, folks. My name is Riaz. I kind of lead the research arm of AppSeco. We do a lot of stuff around application security and cloud security mainly. AppSeco is a specialist security company that focuses on identifying and providing security advice to customers all across different industry verticals all across the world. And we've worked with a lot of Fortune 500 companies as well. What we have today is Kavisha and her experience with discovering and learning AWS attacks. Right? And we're going to look at a lot of different vulnerabilities that we may be familiar with in part. But let's take a look at the approach that she used in identifying and learning and discovering these issues, even with real world examples that she may have in the slides. Right? I'll just introduce Kavisha, speaker for the day. She's a security analyst with our security testing team here at AppSeco, right? And she dabbles with. She's a cloud security enthusiast primarily, and she also does some amount of machine learning and again application and API security testing is a forte. And she's also a member of a lot of security communities here back in India as well as a bunch of other places. Null community being one of them, the primary and largest security open security community in India. InfoSec Girls as well as YSys India Group. That's what she's a part of. She's done a bunch of talks around attacking GraphQL and attacking AWS at other community and forums, right? She's also been appreciated by the Indian government for reporting security issues for some of their sensitive installations. And she's also received a letter of appreciation of the government of United Kingdom. I had to mention that, Karsha. All right. Krish, I'll hand it over to you. Go ahead. Folks, I'll be available on the meet. I'll be moderating the chat and the Q&A. If you have any questions, you can keep posting them there. I'll try and answer them. And Kavish and I can take any of them that remain at the end of the talk while she's delivering the presentation. Okay, over to you, Kavish.
Thank you for such a nice introduction from me, Riaz. Let me start what we're gonna cover today. So our topic will be understanding AWS attacks using cloud code. Okay, so Riaz has already covered about me, so I'm not gonna discuss about me. So let's discuss what we'll cover today. So first, why are we doing this? Then I'll be gonna discuss AWS real world attacks like attacking AWS infrastructure using keys obtained via SSRF, then enumerating and attacking AWS S3 storage, then privilege escalation within AWS using IAM policy rollback, and then privilege escalation using Lambda function. And after that, I'll be discussing some tools and I will be providing some references for the same so that you can practice. So why are we doing this? So nowadays, everyone wants to move to the cloud. But when it comes to security, it's major concern for the industry because during our client assessment, we have observed that there are multiple security misconfiguration, and that has been used to attack the AWS, right? So it's like some developer might be using default code or default environment practices which is present on the internet, and they are not bothering about the what security standards should be followed. So before that, you should be aware what are the possible attacks has been done on the AWS, right? So that's why we are covering what are the different types of attacks so that you can defend yourself in the better way. Okay, and it's like, yeah, let's deploy our current environment in the AWS so that you can learn, and here you make the mistakes. So this what I mentioned, right? These are the different types of attacks we will gonna discuss today. So first, before we start, we have used the cloud code environment for the testing and demonstrating the AWS attacks, right? So first, let's just start with the taking AWS infrastructure using keys obtained via SSRF. So it sounds like more complicated to you. So I have break it down. So you have the web application which is hosted on EC2 instance, but that web application is vulnerable to SSRF. And as it's hosted on the EC2 instance, you can find the credential, which is IAM role credential, and using that you can target the AWS infrastructure. How that we're gonna discuss now, and I'll be showing that how can you do that. So first assumption that you found the credential, how, so you can found on the GitHub or the server side code disclosure, right? Or sometimes it's stored hard coded in the JavaScript itself. Many times you will find that. So now you got the credential. What should be in the next step of yours? Identify who's the credential is, right? So using SJS get caller identity command, you will determine, hey, this is credential belongs to this user. This command will tell will work like who am I, like it will definitely say who is the user. So in our case we found that user is the Solus. So we found that, hey, this is the user. So you must be thinking, okay, I got the username, what will be the next step? So next step must be to enumerate permission for that particular user, right? So by that you can determine that what are the permission that user is having. In our case, this user only have the read only permission with the he can just list out the Lambda function. So it sounds good to me. I can see what else I can list out, right? So as an attacker, I'll start listing out the function. So I say, hey, AWS Lambda list function for me. So while doing that, I found the hard-coded AWS security credentials in the environment variable of the Lambda function. So again, what will be the next step for you, right? So again, you will configure the profile and say STS get caller identity and the configure profile name, the Lambda store and credential. So by this, I found another user which name called Rex. Okay. Again, I need to figure out what the permission this user has. Might be potential that it might be having more access, the permission that the Solus. So we found that this user is having the permission for the EC2 operations, right? Now after you know that hey, these are the EC2 operations I can do, I started with the describing instance. Okay, so I found this instance for the EC2. Okay, that are the instance running on. Then I'll go for the hey, I start with the describe instance. So while I was describing the instance as an attacker, I found that public address of the EC2 instance. Now as an attacker, I'll think, okay, can I access this IP address? Is there any web application present on this IP address? If yes, okay, so it's showing that hey, this is accessible on the port number 80, but it's showing the stack trace saying that URL must be a string. Now what would be my next step? I say, okay, I'll be provide the URL input parameter, and I will be giving the required URL value, right? So here I am saying URL is equal to ifconfig. So it will return the IP address. So this is how I can say it's vulnerable to SSRF, because I'm making requests to the server and getting response back. So that's why we are telling that hey, this web application is vulnerable to SSRF, right? Now what would be the next step? You gonna stop over here? No, because why? This application has been uh, hosted on the EC2 instance. So you can go further and make it more severe. How? I'm gonna discuss that. So we have covered vulnerable to SSRF. This is hosted on EC2 instance. So what you should look for is the role attached. If yes, then look further if IAM role credential is, are you able to fetch that? Okay, so we're gonna try that. So yes, I was able to fetch the IAM role credential. How? So instead of URL ifconfig, I was saying that, hey, 169.254, 169.254, latest metadata, IAM security credential. So by this, I got that this is the user role. And after knowing the user role, I can fetch the credential for the same, like secret key and access key ID, everything, right? So this is how can you take it further and make it more severe. Okay, so after that you got the credential. What would be the next step? You enumerate permission and look for the what are the permission. Is that user having any interesting permission? And here we found that, yeah, this user is having the to list out S3 buckets. So it's quite win condition, but we'll look how we can go further. So Attica started listing out the bucket, and he found one interesting bucket that it's saying that secret S3 bucket, and he just downloaded data from that. And guess what he found? Admin credential. So by this, attacker can found any sensitive information. So there are severe data breaches has been happened, right? And what attacker has found: credit card information, uh, password, configuration files, backup files, everything has been found because the S3 misconfiguration, because attacker was able to list out the S3 bucket and downloaded the data in on machine, right? So let me just summarize in a good way. What was our approach from where we have begun, right? So first we have found the credential, which was not having the S3 related access, right? It just having the read only access that say you can just list the Lambda functions, right? Then but we found the hard coded credential in the environment, and we just configure profile, and that user was having the EC2 operations, right? And after that we found that one IP, and that was running on port number 80, and that was the application and vulnerable to SSRF. And the application was hosted on EC2 instance, so that we found that, okay, we can just list out the security credential, and then we started looking for the permission, and then we found the S3 related permission, and just we list out the S3 bucket, right? And downloaded the data. So this was the standard approach. So I just break it down to make it more simple. So I just create a flowchart to make you understand more in the simple way. So I'm just summarizing that. Found the credential, having the read-only access. In our case, what was that? Who was that? It's Solus, right? Then we enumerate permission and found the privilege to list a Lambda function, right? And after listing that functions, we found, hey, there is one more credential is present, right? And we configure that and found the EC2 related operations, and just same, the web application was running on port number 80 and accepting URL input as it is, and it was vulnerable to the SSRM. So after that, what should you look for, right? You must be saying, hey, this is done. No, you should go further and you should look for, hey, is this hosted on the EC2 instance? Check A. Check B. Is the role attached to EC2 instance? Yes. Then go further and try to uh, fetch the IAM credential, or try to get the credential. If you are able to get those credential, go for it and exploit based on the what permission that user has. Okay, so this is how you can use the SSRF to exploit further, right? So during the assessment, we have found one interesting bug that was finding SSRF via HTML injection inside a PDF file on EC2 instance. So just let me break it down to make you understand. Okay, so first we have started. So there is functionality when you input something, it render in the PDF. Okay, so we started with the HTML injection, and we found that hey, it's vulnerable to the HTML injection, and we went further and we started looking for the SSR, and we used Bub collaborator, and we are getting the response back in the collaborator client, right? So as this application was hosted on EC2 instance, we started looking for the if we are able to find the credentials, and here we are able to find the credential. This is the access key, ID, secret access key, token value, everything was known to us. Came across, right? Now, second attack I'll be talking about the AWS S3 data breach. Okay, so you most of people have heard about this because most of data breach has been talking about this. Hey, this data breach has been done. This millions of people data get being compromised or being clicked to the attackers, right? So let's just discuss about it. I'll be giving the another point of view, and after that I'll be giving you how many different ways you can find this vulnerability, right? So in this scenario, we have the assumption that attacker has discovered public IP with the HTTP reverse proxy running. Assumption B, reverse proxy is misconfigured. It does not check the basically target IP, that if I am requesting or the attacker is requesting for this particular IP, right? And the reverse proxy was allowing to the accessing the internal IP addresses, including the instance metadata, right? It's quite dangerous. So just go further. So what attacker has how the attacker has determined is the it's misconfigured a reverse proxy, right? So first he got the IP address, right? But it was not accessible directly. When you say call the IP address, it was not allow me to access that. So what attacker has thought that hey, what if I use the EC2 instant IP as a header part of the host? Okay, so he was requesting say, hey, host will be the EC2 instance, and it just saying that this is the reverse proxy, and here I'm saying hey, this is my IP. So I'm able to get the data even though I am not having the access to request for that particular IP. So by that I was able to access that IP, and after that I was able to fetch the metadata. Then what next? If you are able to fetch the metadata, what will be you do next? Obviously you're gonna look for the security credential. So we found the one role, and after that knowing that role, I look for the if I'm able to fetch the secret key ID, secret access key, and token. Yeah, I was able to. So it's again dangerous issue. And after that you configure the stolen credentials. For example, AWS configure profile stolen credentials, and after that you look for the what are the permission that particular user has, right? If you get the credential, what will be the next step, what else you can do? So for that you will need to enumerate the permission. So again here the user having the to list out the S3 bucket. Okay, if you notice, see here it says S3 list bucket. So after that, you get the access to the S3 bucket data, and here I will be having access to the credit card details of the users. So it's really dangerous. Okay, so there are multiple companies were vulnerable to this vulnerability, right? The data breaches has been happened because of this, because they were lacking of to configure S3 bucket properly, right? And this was the standard one. So let me just say what was the standard approach. So you started with the IP of EC2 instance. You look for it, but it was not directly accessible. So what you have done, you use the misconfigured reverse proxy vulnerability, and you just go further. You uh, request for that IP address using that reverse proxy, and you assume that EC2 instance profile, and you list out the S3 bucket and downloaded the sensitive information of the cardholder users, right? So that is one approach. What is the another approach? So where else you can find the S3 buckets, right? So you should look when you uploading the file. In the response, you might get the S3 bucket related information. Look for that. Look for the DNS record. Sometimes it also reveal about the S3 bucket. Do the Google search for the website name and S3 bucket. Sometimes Google Docs work. Use the Shodan certificate transparency logs. Then there are a bunch of bucket finder script that you can use, and Greyhead Warfare bucket search that also you can use to find the S3 buckets. Okay. After that, what should your approach if you find the S3 bucket? Just don't go for it and file that, hey, I found your issue. No, look for what kind of permission you have. You are able to list out, you are able to delete something, you are able to, so you, before you start deleting something, that is not allowed. So what you do, first you list out. If you find anything interesting, report it. If you are not able to find it, start to moving content or the copying, and then remove the data. Don't just directly remove the data, it must be illegal, right? So it again issue. So this should be your standard approach. If you find the S3 bucket, then look for the what else you can, right? The third vulnerability, the attack I'll be discussing, is that privilege escalation within AWS using IAM policy rollback. Okay, so it's
Kavisha,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. Before you move on, there is a window that's open on your screen that's actually blocking part of the screen. Can you just minimize that? There is a zoom window, right?
Okay.
Where you can see us. Just click on that minus button. No, it's still there. Just click on the first button on that. The minus. Yeah.
Now?
Yes. Much better.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Continue.
So third attack is privilege escalation within AWS using IAM policy rollback. So if you notice, there are two standard keywords, privilege escalation and IAM policy rollback. We can figure out, okay, so there is something privilege escalation is happening, and B, there is something to do with the IAM policy. How? Let me discuss. Okay. So first assumption, you found the credentials. Okay. How? You can found in the JS, you can found on the GitHub, you can found on the, it can be found on the server side code disclosure, right? So look for that, and you found that. Anyhow, attacker has found those. What should be the next step? Again, credential has been found. Next step will be he just configure the profile, and he will look for who the credential belongs to, right? In our case, it's Rhino. The credential belongs to the Rhino. Okay. Now, what will be the my next step in the policy related, right? So I'll just list out or enumerate the policy versions. So here I have found the 5 policy which is related to that Rhino user, and the version 1 was the default version. Okay. Now I just wanted to know what are the privilege or the permission this policy is having. Okay. So I tried enumerating the policy versions. Okay. What are the privilege? What is the policy saying, right? So in the version 1, which was default one, it just allowed to get list. Okay. So I can't do the administrator level access, right? It's a god level access. So no, I'm not interested in this. What next? So by enumerating version 2, version 3, so in version 3, I found, hey, action is star, effect is allow, resource is star. So definitely we can say it's admin level access. It's god level access. So what would be my next step? I just want to make this policy as a default policy so that I can have the admin level privileges, right? So here I made the version 3 as a default policy version. And yeah, I was having access as a admin, and I was able to create the new user called attacker. You can rename as any user, but you can think, right? Here I have created user, same way I can remove the user. Same way I can do anything which admin can do, right? It's again a really severe issue. Now, to detect this vulnerability automatically, instead of going through the manually all the step-by-step procedure, you can definitely use the AWS Escalate Python script, or you can say tool, and you can determine if it's vulnerable to this attack or not, right? So fourth attack, I will be discussing privilege escalation using Lambda function. Okay, so here, look for the keywords. Privilege escalation happening? Yes, happening. What will be the second? Lambda function. Okay, so we are able to figure out, hey, we have to do something with the Lambda function, and privilege escalation is possible, right? So I'll just start it. Okay, again, same assumption. You will be having the credential has been found somewhere on internet. This is the, believe me, you will definitely find this is standard mistake has been done by many clients on the right. So let's let's get stuck. Okay. Just sorry for this, it just gets stuck from my side. Okay, so we were here. Yeah. So what will be the next step? Okay, so let me just again brief you what we have done. We found the credential. What will be the next step? And we will having context that, hey, there is a Lambda function is going on. There is a privilege escalation is possible. But what should be our approach, right? So first, you found the credential. You configure the profile. You list the user. What are the user available on that particular profile? So I found 4 users. So I started with the Chris. Okay, and I started looking for what are the policy has been attached for that Chris. So I noted down the policy version, and I started looking for the what are the different roles has been present. Okay, so as an I found that, hey, this is Lambda manager role, and there is another role. This is called debug role. Now I want to see what are the access this particular 2 roles are having, right? So what I have done, I look for that uh, access control for that 2 roles. Okay, so for Lambda manager, it's quite dangerous, and both are, why I will be discussing why. Okay, so first, Lambda manager was having the access to the anything related to the Lambda functions. How I'm saying that? Because if you see resource star and effect allow, Lambda star means Lambda anything. Okay, it's quite so much permission you have given for the Lambda related, right? And another interesting user is debug role, which is having the administrator access. Oh, it's quite interesting for me. If I'm the Lambda manager user and I want to access as an administrator access, how can I do? I'm gonna discuss how can you do that, right? So as a Lambda manager, I started assuming my role, and I was able to assume the role and I got the credential. What would be the next step? Obviously, I configured them and I attach the administrator policy to IAM user Chris. Okay, using Boto 3. Why are we doing this? Because we are having the Lambda all resource access, right? So it's, you can create the function, you can invoke the function, all level access you have. So I just create the Lambda function. So I think AWS Lambda create function, and I think function name is admin function, or you can name is at any function as you want. Then I'll be using that code we have used earlier, right, which I have mentioned, or the script, you can say that. I will be mentioning that, hey, I will be using that, and I'll create the function. After that, I started invoking the Lambda function, and guess what? I got the access, means Chris got the access as an admin. How we just attach the policy as a to the Chris as an administrator policy using Lambda function. So that's why how the privilege escalation was happening using the Lambda, right? So this is again an issue. So you should be make sure that you are not giving too much access if you are using the Lambda function, or you are having the Lambda manager role. So make sure that. So let me just say what was my approach. So I started with the credential I got. I identified that there is Lambda manager role, which was having full Lambda access and the pass role permission. Major issue, right? Like how that, see, you are able to assume the Lambda manager role using Chris. You are able to identify debug role, which has full administrator access. Uh, so you think, okay, I found one user which is having full administrator access. B, I am a Lambda manager role, I am having full Lambda access. What I'll do, I create the Lambda function passing a high privilege debug role and invoke that function. And yeah, I'll achieve the admin powers. So this is what happening with the Chris. Okay. So this was the standard summarized approach. Okay. So when you are starting with the detecting AWS vulnerabilities, right? So what tools can be used to speed up your procedure? So A, you can use Scout Suite. B, Prowler. Both are the like finding a misconfiguration issue. Then CIS related, it just follows CIS benchmark related issues. So it will automatically highlight those issues for you. So you can save the time. A bucket finder, it will list out the what are the S3 buckets are the present, right? Then another tool has been used is enumerate IAM. It will enumerate the permission which we have tried, right? I just mentioned earlier. And another is IAM user enum. So again, this is user enumeration, and you can go further and escalate, right? And other tools also I have mentioned how can do the AWS policy related attack automatically, right? That tool also I have mentioned. Now, things to note. Okay, so when you look for the AWS attack, or you are from the you are security engineer or the developer, what should you consider, right? So A, Recon and the OSINT are the key to discover security issue in the cloud services and the application. As I discussed, right, you can find the credential in the JavaScript, even in the Shodan, even using Google Doc, even Google search, in a GitHub. So these are the standard ways you can discover security issue. B, you can prevent risk associated with the successful SSRF on AWS just by administrator can upgrade EC2 instance metadata to IMDS v2 version. Okay, so which can protect EC2 instance against vanilla SSRF attempts. Okay, vanilla means standard SSRF. Make sure that EC2 instance are configured properly. These are most like uh, we found that hey, EC2 instances are not configured properly. Then the most common things are misconfiguration of the services, insecure programming, and the permission that should not have been given, because we have seen like many, like sometimes we don't consider that this much permission should not be given that to particular user, and that leads to the plenty of the attacks, like we have discussed two of them, right? Post exploitation has no limits with the cloud. Like I have mentioned, how can you go for the SSRF, and even though it's Lambda related, how can you go further? So there is no limit. Make code changes to the attack user. So there is no limit, right? There are tons of tools that security folks have been written on the GitHub. Try looking for that. And there is lots of research is done in the attack and exploitation area. So start referring that. And I have provided some links as well. So these are the reference. I have mentioned the CloudGoat, which you can practice. I have mentioned the tool. I have mentioned the AppSeco, which we have created solution for this. We have discussed about EC2 instance and the SSRF vulnerabilities. I have also mentioned getting shell and the data access in AWS by chaining vulnerabilities. Diaz has given awesome talk on this. Now, yeah, and these are the links for the different types of tools has been used, and you can use Prowler and Scout Suite, which I have mentioned, right? So yeah, if you have any questions, just let us know. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or anything. Any questions so
Yeah,
far?
Kavisha, you can check the question and answer section. There are some questions there. Riaz, you might want to also look into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've been answering frantically while Kavisha was talking. It's I've
Question
got,
from Gautam, you might want to answer that.
yeah, the SSRF bit, the IMDS v2 bit, right? I'll just
Okay.
Gautam. So Gautam's asking, can I explain SSRF can be protected or mitigated using IMDS v2? I would say there are different types of SSRFs, right? The most common one that we are familiar with is the standard vanilla SSRF, where you are able to pass a URL or an endpoint to the server. The server makes a request on your behalf from the server. So it's obviously server-side request forgery, right? That's the most common SSRF technique that we know. There are more variants of SSRF out there, and completely depending on how the implementation is of the application that's actually vulnerable, right? If you have an application that accepts header data, right? Imagine an example that comes to my mind is, imagine an application that allows you to interact with an API endpoint. It's like a playground for APIs. Most of these large services, Facebook and Netflix including, have like an API playground where you can try out different APIs, right? If this was vulnerable to SSRF, you would be able to provide, where you provide authentication, bearer information, and other things, you would be able to use this page to craft a request that the server uses to make a request from the server, adding additional headers, and the headers also you control. Okay. Now, again, it's one of the common misconceptions out there that SSRF is an application security issue. Right? It's not. It's an issue across multiple services, across multiple products, across multiple different types of applications, not necessarily web applications. Simply because any system that is capable of taking a user provided input and making a server side request is going to be vulnerable. It's not only web applications in that case. When it comes to IMDS v1, which is the standard, the default instance metadata version enabled on AWS, until recently you can now specify what kind of what version of IMDS IMDS you want when you're starting a new machine. IMDS v1 absolutely had no requirement for headers across Azure and GCP. Since they've been active virtual machine instance services on the internet, both of these platforms have had some level of protection where you had to provide a header as either saying instance metadata true, right, or something like that, metadata : true as a header, which meant that you would be able to access the instance metadata only if you were on the server. With IMDS v2, AWS promises to provide some protection in that way, wherein you are required to provide a token. You're supposed to first generate a token and then provide that token in the next subsequent request to the instance metadata. Okay. Now, the question specifically is, can SSRF be protected or mitigated using IMDS v2? To a certain extent, across all vanilla SSRFs, yes, IMDS v2 is the recommended solution. But if your application that's hosted on EC2 provides capability to the user to add headers and then uses those headers to make a request from the server, then no, IMDS v2 will not help. I hope, Gautam, that answers your question. I'll take another one. Is metadata endpoint enabled by default? Yes. For EC2 instances that are spun up on AWS, yes. We will paste the links in chat and the references in text here in a bit.
Yeah.
Kavisha, can you do that if while I'm looking at this?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
And any thoughts about using CloudTrail logs in detecting the bad from the good? Rather obvious. This is an interesting one. CloudTrail will, again, you require some level of analysis on the CloudTrail logs themselves to be able to detect what is good from bad. Once data is, or rather once a request is inside the AWS platform, CloudTrail cannot identify if the request that is emanating from EC2 was instantiated by a user who's sitting outside the EC2. Right? As an example of an application that's running on EC2 and CloudTrail logging any of those API calls from there. For CloudTrail, the call emanated from the EC2 machine, right? And that is what is going to get logged. So ideally, you would need to track what kind of requests are coming out of different services across AWS and then map them to the CloudTrail logs themselves so that you can identify whether it's good or bad. Siddharth's asking, what is preventing someone from generating that token required for, to be able to generate a token required for IMDS v2, you have to be on the server. So you either need to have SSH access or console access to the machine. Recently, AWS also started this feature of serial console connections to AWS, to EC2 instances. You would have to use that or an SSH instance, or you would have to use like on the spot short-lived SSH sections or command execution or something like that. The important bit is IMDS v2 and requires you to specify this token to the 169 IP address. The 169.254 IP address is non-routable, which means you cannot access it outside the machine. You would have to generate a request from the machine itself, which is why an application running on EC2 instance that is vulnerable to SSRF is going to become, or rather can be abused to access the instance metadata. If somebody is outside the EC2 instance, they cannot, there's no way for them to generate a token for that particular machine's IMDS v2. Unless they have like shell access. If you have shell access to an EC2 box, you have bigger problems. Okay, I'll just revisit one of the questions that. Yeah. So. Yeah. Kaisha, did you paste the
Yeah.
answer?
Yes, I have given them.
Sure. So Shivam asked during the talk, is there any good tool to enumerate S3 buckets, right?
Mhm.
Folks, attackers especially have to relate to S3 not as a specialized service inside AWS. It may be, it is definitely a specialized service inside AWS, but the part that is exposed to the internet are domain names, right?
Yep.
Just like any other domain name that you can search off on Google, if it's crawled, you can definitely use Google itself to search for S3 buckets, right? I've given an example in the answer field. You can simply do site:/star.s3.amazon.aws.com in double quotes, whatever target you want to find. If they have a bucket that's been crawled by Google, you'll be able to find it. Right. Another example, another popular thing that I use is Grey Hat Warfare. Pretty cool. It's a little expensive when it comes to like searching for buckets and stuff. But yeah, you can use that as well. Slurp is another good tool that uses CTLs to identify any buckets. And as Kavisha mentioned during the talk, once you find a bucket, finding the bucket is not necessarily a problem, right? The bucket itself may be protected from public eyes, but it could definitely have a misconfiguration where devs want their bucket's content to be publicly available, and they make the entire bucket public instead of just making particular files within it. There are loads of services, loads of scripts as well. Bucket Finder is a good example
Yeah.
that works with a dictionary, right? And I would recommend creating a custom dictionary for the target that you are going after. And JavaScript sources, reverse DNS names for reverse DNS lookups for CDNs and stuff can all lead to finding bucket names. Where can we get access to the presentation? Oh, that I think JV is already answered. So after using this dork for S3 bucket, using AWS CLI will be enough for the enumeration. Okay, there are two parts here. When you've used a dork to find an S3 bucket, the Google search string is called dork in most cases. When you use a dork to find an S3 bucket using any search engine, what's the one with Microsoft? Bing, right? And
Yeah.
Google or Baidu, or it doesn't matter what. If you
Or
are
you can
able
use some tool as well.
Sure, if you're able to find an S3 bucket, the AWS CLI can be used to download content from the bucket if and only if the bucket has complete public access, right? If the bucket is restricted, and if it is restricted, the circle is that if it is restricted, it will not come up on inside the docs. So yes, if it's visible in the doc, it's very likely a public bucket, and the public bucket can then be used to do enumeration of files and stuff. I'm assuming enumeration here means downloading and enumerating the contents of the bucket, not like other buckets within the organization.
And
A lot of organizations. Sorry, go Kash.
Or you can just don't limit yourself by enumerating S3 bucket. Just go for the exploitation part as well. Try to add something on the S3 bucket and remove it, but don't try to remove the default content has been present on the S3 buckets.
Yeah. So I was saying that a lot of companies have a particular pattern in which they generate names for instances or assets on AWS, right? If you have a department, for example, HR, right? HR has a files bucket. So hr-files.s3.amazon.aws.com is a very common concept that large companies use. If you are able to find using a dork or any other means, if you're able to find a bucket, and if you're able to identify some trend in the way the buckets are being named, the storages are being named, then you can try creating a dictionary, custom dictionary for that organization and running it through Bucket Finder. How can we approach AWS Pentest? Is there a common methodology? Because there are many services in AWS. that's a challenge that all of us face in the industry, and it's actually a good thing because regardless of what different services AWS has, people keep falling back to IAM as a way to interact with these services, right? And that's the go-to standard, the defined way of accessing any service on AWS anyways. So when you want to approach an AWS Pentest, you have to identify externally what's visible for that AWS account, right? And then with some level of security or read-only credentials for the AWS account, mimicking what an attacker would do if they had obtained limited set of credentials for that AWS account. Identify any other users that may have been misconfigured in IAM, like the policy example that Kavish showed. See if you can do privilege escalation from there and stuff, right? I would recommend you take a look at the MITRE attack framework for AWS, right, under the cloud section. They have a very nice layout of different tactics and techniques that attackers use, along with a lot of examples, and very profusely documented section where they talk about the MITRE attack framework itself explains what an attacker would do when approaching a particular stage in the assessment. Right, for initial discovery, what would it do? For exploitation, what would it do? Right, so things like that are pretty brilliantly listed out in the MITRE attack framework. Let me just see if I can pull that up and show you my screen. MITRE AWS. Yeah, I opened it yesterday. I can share my screen, right, Kevin? Yeah. Share screen. Share screen. This is what I'm talking about. If you AWS and they've actually updated this. There was a discussion on Twitter a couple of days ago, couple of weeks ago actually, where they're planning to move all cloud related techniques under an IaaS matrix. So the rows and the columns, right? So the rows are the tactics and the columns are the techniques that an attacker would employ under each particular tactic. So for initial access, what would be the kind of technique that the attacker would apply? So a public exploit public facing application is one of them, and they would use this to then move from initial access to execution to persistence all the way to exfiltration and impact. Okay, this is a brilliant, at least a way to get started with this. Okay, so maybe you can take a look at this. I'll just share this link on chat as well. I think we have a minute or two more. Any more questions? Kavish, if you can just open up the SSRF for the PDF exploit thing. Huh? I'll just talk about that. So that was a very interesting bug.
Yep, I can.
Just share that page and share your screen.
Okay. Let me know when you're able to see the screen.
Not yet. Yes. Can you move the chat window or whatever it's going to be? A lot of folks are fairly familiar with SSRF. It's been around for the last 10 years or so now, right? This particular vulnerability was in an application that was generating a PDF page based on HTML content that was added to the application, right? So there was a text box where you could add any content, right? There was no sanitization on the content itself. You could add content to the page, and then you could render the page as PDF. So print PDF. So it's a very common functionality in a lot of SaaS applications as well. Download PDF reports and stuff, right? The application, there were two major faults. The application did not sanitize the input that was being provided in this text box, and the PDF renderer did not verify if the page that it was going to be parsing, Phantom.json, I think in this case, the backend HTML reader did not verify if the page actually contained redirects or requests going out from the server. So what we ended up doing was, in the web application, we added an iframe in the text box. We added an iframe to 169.254, 169.254, all the way to IAM security role credentials and stuff. This iframe was invoked on the server by the PDF renderer. So the program that was running on the server, Phantom.json, I think in this case, crawled the page on the server, loaded the iframe. The iframe called the instance metadata, gathered the credentials, and the credentials came back to us in the PDF that was downloaded. Right, so we've actually blogged about the technical details on our AppSecOps blog. Please do take a look at that. Right, and this is a pretty cool bug because it was unexpected to find an SSRF here. It stopped at XSS, right? Because the page was not sanitized and it could pop up an alert. But looking at the potential of HTML injection and bundled with the functionality that you could generate a PDF out of any page you wanted, you could easily convert this into an SSRF. Any other questions? KV, I think we're close to our time. Kavisha, can you keep the Q&A slide up?
Yep.
Yeah, we don't have any further questions, I think.
Sure.
Yes.
Folks, do get in touch with us. Our Twitter and yeah, we'll share the presentation
I'll
itself.
be sharing that.
We'll put it up on a blog or something. Kavisha, if you can just share the Q&A page quickly. I'll
Yep.
just point folks to our Twitter and our blog. We keep there are tons of interesting exploits and attacks that we've blogged on our on the AppSecOps blog. Please do take a look at that. And yeah, so blog.appsecops.com is the URL. And do get in touch with Kavisha or us using contact@appsecops.com. Thank you, folks, for making it weird times that we're living in, sparing the time to go through our talk in the morning today. KV, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Riaz and Kavisha. It was a great session. So looking forward to talking to you again. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.